Here at Be Freaking Awesome, we believe that life is too short to be anything less than extraordinary. Join us as we explore what it means to live authentically, grow continuously, and have a blast while doing it. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Be Freaking Awesome. I'm one of your hosts, Sami Kinnison, here with Angela Belford, and today we are joined by very special guest, Moyra Gorski. Moyra, thanks so much for being with us today.
So excited to be here. It's a great day.
Okay, so you also have a podcast that Angela was a guest on. Your
Yes.
podcast is The Journey to Joy, Journey of Joy.
Your journey to the
Your journey to joy.
Yeah, your journey to joy. I'm like, what? Yeah, had a little
Well,
brain. Yeah, it's second season. I started it with another, but now it's your journey to joy.
Your
So,
Journey to Joy.
yeah.
How did that come about for you?
Well, I'll start with the first part of the podcast. In the beginning of 2020, I just had a kind of an inspiration to start a podcast because my daughter had been struggling for many, many years with an eating disorder. And as her mother and as her caregiver, I just felt kind of lost in this world of nobody really talks about the bad stuff. And I was learning along that way. For one, I was kind of scared and felt very isolated, didn't know who to talk to. But I also learned during that time that I really had to take care of myself. I had to put my oxygen mask on first and all of those things. And as I was starting to take better care of myself, I was meeting so many people that had incredible stories of overcoming, if it was an eating disorder and any other addictions. And I'm like, and those were so inspiring to me. And so I thought, why don't I start a podcast and I'll share my journey of kind of, again, into that real self-care mode, taking care of myself, and also share these stories because, and honestly, I needed those stories of hope and inspiration, myself. And I know that if I knew if I needed those, then there were plenty that needed those. So I started, and it was called Juggling the Chaos of Recovery. That's what it felt like in my life. There was so much chaos of building a business and raising 4 kids and then having somebody that's struggling with a, life-threatening disorder. So it started that way. And, the world shut down in the beginning of 2020. So it actually was a great start. I had a wonderful connections with people and, really had a great couple of years. And again, it was so helpful for me during that time because it was really the time that our daughter struggled the most. And things continued to get better for me as well as my daughter. And this joy thing kept coming up. I created a journal called Your Journey to Joy. And I realized that as things were getting better, if you will, I was kind of waiting for the joy to return, and because you're kind of waiting for things to get better and waiting for the joy to return. And I realized I needed to go find those things. I needed to go do those things myself. And so then I started again to do those. And that started to be my message. And I started to talk more about joy. And I was at a women's event and we were talking about our businesses and our podcast. And I have a wellness business and just all of the intersection of all of that. And they asked me, well, what are some things that aren't working for you? Or maybe what things aren't resonating, and actually chaos and disorder came up. And I was like, what? Wait a minute. That's part of the name of my podcast. And we started talking about joy and how that was so important to me. And actually a friend and I had been talking and she says, why couldn't joy be like the journey of you? I'm like, okay, well, that's it. So I said, that's when I really had that inspiration to change the name of the podcast, kind of step into the second season. I still talk about overcoming challenges and addictions and things like that, but we really we don't focus so much on the struggle. We focus on that joy piece. And joy can look differently for everybody. But again, I think that the joy is the journey, the journey of you. We can look outside for things that bring us joy, but really at the end of the day, we can find that we need to start finding that joy within ourselves. So that's a bit of a long story, but that's how it came about.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you for sharing. I want to just share the thought that's in my brain that we don't have to go follow because it's probably a rabbit trail. In marketing work, there's a couple of different perspectives about how people try to like position their products or their services. And the one that drove me to write my college senior thesis about everything wrong with the advertising and marketing industries was is problem focused marketing and like agitating the problem too much or creating a problem. And there's a different perspective that's about offering the solution, and it's kind of
Mm.
like, where are you positioning it? Are we positioning it from the problem, or are we positioning it from the solution, and what you're going to see and what kind of vision? There's different merits to both, blah, blah, blah. I have a more nuanced perspective than young, early 20 something Sammy that, yes, articulating the problem. Angela laughs because she gets to hear this a lot in our marketing day jobs. But this feels like similar thing and a similar journey
Mm.
of saying like chaos might be where it started. That might be the problem. But joy is more future focused and is more, what do we want to do about it? It's not staying keeping our attention on the problem. It's shifting more towards, how do I want to be instead?
That's
Yeah,
right.
I
Yep.
I would also I just gave a talk a few weeks ago where and it came out of the moment that I realized that I was no longer a workaholic. And nobody goes to the meetings to pick up a chip to say, "Hi, today's the last day I'm going to be a workaholic," right? Like but I realized that I had been after my journey to like unwinding a lot of the beliefs that drove my um that was my addiction, was work that drove that. I was trying to prove I'm enough. I was trying to prove that had what it takes. I was trying to prove that I was lovable and I belonged. And that was what I wrote about in my book Traveling Light. And so over the next couple of years, what I can now look back and see is that like I was very afraid to to be a workaholic. Okay, you gotta have balance. Like every goal I set would have to be about balance. You gotta like moderation. Like you can't do too much. You can't do too much. You gotta be careful. Be careful. Be careful. Be careful. Blah, blah, blah. I literally was acting like an alcoholic that was going to have to walk into a bar, right?
Mm.
And when I had this moment, it was back in March, where I had worked all weekend and delighted to have worked all weekend because I had spent my week doing some advocacy work and doing some volunteer work. And so I didn't work and I just had a deadline. I knew how I wanted to feel after the meeting that we had on Monday. And so I worked to create the new feeling that I wanted, and
Mm.
it was such a more future focused. And I realized that weekend that I'm like, wait a minute, you can't become a workaholic because your aholism was driven by a desire to prove you had what it taken to prove. And now that you're solid in that belief, and I know I have what it takes, I know I'm enough. I'm
Mm.
actually not going there's not this big risk. I'm not saying there's not some circumstances that could happen that like, could knock me off course, but on a day-to-day basis, that's not really this giant risk. And it has been fascinating the last few months how much more um I would say driven, and everybody, the most people that know me are like, "Wait, you took a couple years off? Like this was you taking off?" And I'm like, "Yes, because you don't know what's in our head, right?" And so for
Mhm.
me, the freedom now, because I loved to work, and I can tell you during those years that I was really like working through my grief and sorting out these beliefs and feeling all my feelings and doing all those things. I was really like some of the grief that I had to mourn was I thought I had lost that part of me, that I was never going to get to be that driven self again because that was bad. And it has been
Mm.
so fascinating, and now I'm just like I'm propelled to the future. I'm no longer looking to the past. I am now propelled to the future, and it sounds like very similar to what you like. The escaping chaos is outrunning the past,
Mhm.
and the journey to joy. I love that. The journey to joy. You are now forward facing, and you are being compelled forward instead
Mhm.
of trying to outrun the chaos, right? So
Mhm.
this is beautiful. And also I think that's why when you and I had your podcast, I was like, you have
Mhm.
to come on. It's just
Right.
such a deep place of connection. I think there's a lot of people that can really relate to that. What has been some of your feedback that you've gotten from the podcast?
Well, um it's been great. I mean, and there are sometimes people will say, I mean, I have to commend you for doing the work. I mean, you've done the work, right? And so that you, when you are going to work and setting your goals and doing that, you've done the work. And so you're not in that same place of just drive, drive, drive and drive yourself into the ground and, forget about all the other things or whatever. I mean, you've done the work. And
Yep.
I had a similar conversation with somebody this week when they were commending me for setting a boundary or what it was that I did. They said, "Wow, you're just so good." I said, "Listen, it's because of the work that I've done. I mean, thank you very much for noticing that, but it's because of the work that
Yep.
I've done." And so I do get some great response from the podcast and also just the way that I put the message out there. And I mean, people, and I talk to a lot of women. I mean, women are looking for that because they're just, and I work with a lot of women kind of in the middle stage of their life and that are going through menopause and these change and this transition. And women are just like lost and scared and they're just losing all of their joy. And so they're really grateful to have a place to look towards to just say, wow, it is possible. And I don't sugarcoat it and say, oh, it's all great, because it ain't great all the time. And
Yep.
it does require that work. And
Yep.
I, share the podcast, but I also share all the other things that I'm doing to say, in order to continue to find your joy, you got to do you got to do the work,
Yeah, you can't
and
avoid the negative just for the positive.
yeah,
Yes.
It doesn't
yeah.
quite work out that way.
And the work is the vulnerability and opening up and like peeling back the layers so that you can look inside and see what's there and then deal with it. And that's where the joy really comes, but it comes after so much, some tough work, some tough work. So, yeah.
I have been reading and reading more lately, and I've actually gotten really into different fantasy books. And there's one book in particular um, that, anyway, it's fiction book, but to keep a long story really short, main character has to find this mirror. I don't need to explain why, whatever. Everybody who goes after this mirror that dies. And they're like, what happens? And the person who she needs to partner with is like, as soon as you bring me that mirror, then I'll partner with you. She's like, but everybody dies going to get it. And when she gets there, she realizes that this mirror is this magical mirror that shows you truly who you are, the good, the bad, the ugly, the gross, the beautiful, and all of it. And if you can stand in front of the mirror and face every single part of you,
Mm.
you can take
Mm,
the mirror. And no one before her has ever been able to stand in front of the mirror and face every part of themselves. And so I think about this sometimes.
wow.
And this is a fantasy fiction book, but it is kind of the work sometimes, is can you stand in front of the mirror to say, you know what, every single part of me, every gross, horrible, shameful, dark corner that I would never want anybody to see, and every beautiful, inspiring, connected, and whole part of me, all of this is me, and I will face it. I don't necessarily
Hmm.
have to love it, but I can accept it.
Mm.
And anyway, that's something I think about, that mirror a lot. Um, any of you fans out there of the book, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If you know the book, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll
But
just leave it as a little
that's
teaser.
mirror. I mean, that's
That
mirror work from Louise Hay. I mean,
Hmm.
that's mirror work, is standing in front of the mirror and doing all of those things, opening yourself up. I mean, I have a friend who he stands naked in front of a mirror every night and he speaks to himself and he affirms himself and he touches himself and it's a way that he loves himself. At the end of the
Mhm.
day, before he goes to bed, he gets in front of that mirror and does that work. And it's tough work. He's like, you should do the mirror work. I'm like, sometimes I do, but it's tough.
That's fascinating that you say that, because when we this year we spend February not in the United States, typically somewhere warm. Um, and this last year we were in St. Kitts, and we have family down there, and they had a mirror so that as soon as I stood up, I mean, a giant full length, full wall, almost a full wall mirror. As soon as I got out of bed, there's this giant mirror. And I had misconceptions about my body. And based on the small mirror I have at my house and what the scale would tell me, and after 3 weeks of having to stand in front of that mirror, I'm like, "You are believing a lie about your
Mhm.
body." Like, it's just not true. Like, there's not, because I was like, "There's still these little pockets," and it's like, "No. No, 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 that's made up in your head," and being forced to do it, like, I had to really adjust, and I was a health coach for a few years, and you, I'm sure, can relate to this
Mhm.
as a kind of a fellow health coach. People have body dysmorphia where they
Mhm.
can't even see the difference yet.
Yep.
And I thought I had passed that. And here I am, 2.5 years of maintaining. And I still was like, oh, okay. So I love that idea and that exercise of standing in front of the mirror. I hadn't heard it to do it naked. And I didn't know
Hmm.
where it came from. So now thank
Yeah.
you, Louise
Yeah.
Hay. I love
Louise
her
Hay.
stuff.
Yeah.
She's
Louise Hay.
amazing.
Yeah, it is. Again, it's tough work, um, but as as a therapist to my daughter said one time, everywhere you go, there you are, and there
Yes.
you are, right in front of the
Mhm,
mirror,
mhm.
and it starts. And I say this because I continue to work on it myself. I mean, it starts with us loving ourselves in order for us to show up really great for the world, for our businesses, for our families, for our friends, or whatever. We have to love ourselves so much that we can stand in front of a mirror and say, "Hey, good looking. How you doing? You did a great job today. Kind of sucked at this, and we're gonna get better. And we had a great day. And so I love you. And let's go sleep." Whatever the case is,
Mm,
it can be as short as that, or a longer type of. He has a whole ritual of things that he says, and all of that. But
that's
One of the things
nice.
that was interesting about what you just said, though, is that acknowledging, yep, you sucked at this, and that's okay.
mhm.
And then continuing. I recently I spoke at a conference, and one of the other speakers, after the day, was talking about she felt like she really did not do a good job. At one point in time, she had forgotten where she was. She had to look at her notes. She asked somebody from the audience to bring her up her water, and she took all of those things to mean I was a horrible speaker. What she also left out was the moments that people like full cheers of the auditorium agreeing with what she had to say, and the standing ovation that she got at the end of her speech that not everybody got, and all of these different moments. And so afterwards, when she's like, "Man, I just really feel like I did a bad job," and two or three people were like, "No, no, it was beautiful. It was great." And I was like, "I agree." I was like, "I want to clarify. Yes, was it the most technically perfect delivered speech? It was not. You did have to look at your notes and you asked for water. But is a success of a speech measured by how technically perfect it is, or by how much impact and how much you
Right.
resonated with the people in the audience?" And so by acknowledging, everybody else just kept being like, "No, you were perfect and it was great." And by me taking a moment to say, "You are right. The things that you are seeing, that you're like, I didn't do these things well. That is correct. You didn't do those things well. Where you have drawn a bad conclusion is that because you didn't do those things well, that doesn't mean you did a bad job." And I think that we struggle in this space of, I can acknowledge where I have dropped the ball, and it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be, I did bad, does not have to mean I am bad.
Right.
Right.
And that is not where we end up at a lot.
I
Hmm.
find my language over these last few years has improved. I have a new coach. I'm in a program and I'm on my third coach in 2.5 months. And anyway, the new coach, I'm like, let me catch you up, honey. I do not need you to push me. I do not need you to hold me accountable. What I need you to encourage me. I am doing really well. And sometimes my confidence gets shaky. At that point, I don't need pushing. I need someone to say, "You've got this. I've got you," because part of the program is that they will help you. And I'm like, I need you to tell me I got you. I do not need you to tell me. And then I said, one of the least favorite things about myself is, and I can't remember even actually now what I said, but it stuck with me that I've said that like 2 or 3 times. Like, I used to would have said, "I hate this aspect of my personality," and I've downgraded it. I'm cheering that I downgraded it to say, "My least favorite thing about myself is this." That
Mm,
in this context, and it felt really good to acknowledge it in a way that felt really honest and honoring and not destructive. It's
mm,
like I'm still working on it, but
right.
I think that there's some power in that because otherwise our brains just call BS. If we try
Hmm.
to, like, I would say that that's the whole point of toxic positivity is that you just want to ignore the negative and not accept and acknowledge all the things.
Right.
But we have to. I remember when Sammy shared that story, like we give so much more weight to the negative. I had to ask for water. I lost my place. And why don't we upgrade and why don't we give as much or more value to the 97 people that came up and told us that we did a good job,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. I know it's what we do. I mean, if you're I don't read fantasy. I read some other novels, but I do watch The Voice. So any voice people that watch The Voice this season, one of the gentlemen, when he started, and it was like the finals. When he started, he really just like all of a sudden kind of freaked, and you could tell he was like turning to the band to say, "Oh, let's start over." And then he realized, no, we can't do that. And so he just kept going. And, he ended up making it. I think he was the second guy, at the end of um, after, the top five or whatever it is. But the coach acknowledged that. They said, yeah, we saw you falter a little bit there. And come on, this is like nerve wracking. This is the finals. This is like uncomfortableness. And you pulled it back together
You
and you
kept
did an
going.
incredible song. So
Mhm.
there's so many that just continue to, like you said, we just beat ourselves up and we look at all of the negative. And I say to women so much, let's see the good. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's note. I mean, I went through mindfulness based stress reduction with, and I remember one thing from that program was just that awareness piece and being and noticing things, so we can notice that we screwed up, or maybe we weren't as prepared as we should have
Yep.
been, or we wore the wrong dress on stage or whatever. We can notice that, but when we notice, then we can make the changes or the adjustments
Yep.
or whatever the case is. But it's okay to notice the good and the bad, but
Mm.
let's not stay in the bad. Let's give ourselves some credit,
Mhm.
um, to be saying, well, yeah, but what was good,
No, I love
and that
that.
impact, right? That's
Yeah.
what we talked about before. We went live. Is just the impact that all three of us really are looking to have in the world. And so, what kind of impact are you having? Because people, if you show everything perfect, and I've had a few women say to me, "Oh, you got it all together," I know, like, if you only knew. Like, if we show perfection, then people expect that that's the way they have to live. Like,
Right.
I mean, what's the best is for us to show the messiness, to show the messy bun and the tears and the, you know,
Yeah.
time that you tripped off the back step and broke your foot. And then you're like, what just happened to stupid, clumsy me? You know?
Mm.
Mm.
So,
Well, and I want to catch on something you said that, look for the good. If people are wanting to maybe start or continue their own personal journey to joy, besides that one for sure is looking for the good. What are some other things that people can start to think about just in their own lives and on their paths to find more joy?
yeah. Something that really made a difference in my life was just s- creating a morning routine. I mean, starting the day with myself. And that morning routine can look different for everybody, but just taking that time for yourself. And for me, that looks like, sitting in my favorite chair or up here in my office on the floor in my little meditation pillow, but just taking some time to read.
Mhm.
Usually read my novels at night, but in the morning I read, like I'm starting Jack Canfield's Success Principles again because I'm going
Mhm.
to be in a book club for that. Or I'll read some type of, kind of a spiritual book or something, within the business or self personal development kind of thing. But read for a little bit, journaling's a big part of that. Taking some time to whatever you do, pray, meditate, hydrate with some tea and water and things like that. But having some time in the morning, and it can be 10 minutes. If people say, oh, I'm just too busy, well, you can take 10 minutes, or it can be half an hour depending on how much time you have. But just taking some time for yourself, it makes such a difference in how your day goes when we start, because if you get up and you pull your phone and then you open your computer and then the kids are running around and then your husband wants coffee and like you're just giving to everybody else, you just start to get depleted so quickly. So
Mm.
that morning routine is a way to really fill yourself up, and so that you're better prepared for the day. And I encourage people to do that because then they your days do tend to go better. Um, I talk a lot about wellness and nutrition and just paying attention to what you put in your mouth and put in your head, like,
Mhm.
what you're listening to and things like that. And again, people get overwhelmed and they're like, oh, you got it all together. Like, just start with warm lemon water in the morning. Just start with something, and you can
Mhm.
start small, because if you start with like, okay, I'm going to go vegan and I'm going to drink 80, ounces of water and I'm going to walk 10,000 steps, like we get overwhelmed and then we stop. So I often say to people, if you're looking for more joy, just pick one thing that you want to work on. Maybe you want to just, again, go outside in the morning instead of, and put the phone down and go outside in the morning and just take in the beautiful morning while you sip some water, things like that. But just start small. And then those consistent things will continue to build. And then you can habit stack and put things on top. And then you can go for a walk while you're listening to a podcast and drinking your tea, those
Yeah.
kind of things. But that morning routine's been a big, big game changer for me. And just that idea of just pick something, start small, pick with one thing, get used to that, if you will, get that as a habit, and then you can move to the next thing. Um,
Love that.
and for
I really,
sure, go ahead.
I was like, I want to add my season of life. One of the things that's fun about our podcast is that Angela and I represent two different generations, two different seasons. Angela being an empty nester, I have tiny little children at home. And I have found that I pretty rarely am up before they are. And
Mm.
even like just this very morning, I was opening my eyes as I'm getting yelled at, "Can I have a Pop Tart?" And I'm like, "Hi, good morning. No, yeah, what are you wanting?" And so for me, that like morning routine, and sometimes where it's like first thing you do in the morning, what are you doing on your phone? And I'm like, "No, I'm negotiating with a terrorist. I mean a toddler. I'm sorry."
Correct.
And
Correct.
I when I drop them off in the morning, I am grateful I have a flexible work schedule, and I don't actually start my workday until about 9 o'clock. And
Mm,
so I drop my kids off at school, and then that time right after that, that is when I use for my
perfect. Yeah.
okay, now do you need to read? Do you need to pray? Do you need to do a thing?
Yep.
And I don't think this is going to be a forever season of my life, but I'm not an early riser, so the idea of like wake up at 5 a.m. to try beat the 3-year-old awake just
Right.
sounds kind of miserable. And so my adjustment to that is I have time right after the school drop off time. And so it's not, I'm sure it would be better if I could get it in before I had to start giving to others. And I'm going to take good instead of waiting for
Sure.
perfect, to say if
Right.
perfect would be first thing in the morning. Well, I'm not going to get that right now. I am going to go for something that's good for me
Yeah.
in this time.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, there were some times that I would get up and get out of the house right away to go work out because I wanted to get back,
Mhm.
before the high schoolers went to high school, and, be there for, my daughter and like different things. So I did that. And again, then you get them off, and then, yeah, you have this lull. And it's like, okay, there's the time that I can give to myself. So I love
Yeah.
that. You don't have to look for perfection. It doesn't have to look so pretty and exact. I mean, some people will tell me it's like, yes. And then at the end of the day, I give more to myself once the kids go to bed. I
Mhm.
mean, it's great to have a morning routine and an evening routine, but sometimes again, that's what they do, is they spend more time in the evening,
Mhm.
reading, praying, connecting with their husband and things like that, turning the phone off and doing that during that time, and then go to bed. It's all good.
Yeah. Angela, did you have a thought about little ways that you're finding joy?
I find that I say often that I don't struggle with ADD. I enjoy most minutes of it. Um, and so things like calling it a routine, and I'm not even saying that you did, but my brain translated into a routine. I feel rebellious and push off. So I have really enjoyed um, the flexibility and the relaxed of the rhythm. And
Mm,
for me, it's not even every day is the same rhythm, but I've come to realize that I set my alarm 30 minutes earlier, and not always to get up 30 minutes earlier, but actually to wake up. Sometimes lay there and like to read. And I like to just, I have become more flexible and kind to myself at like trusting that some days I need different things. Like my husband this morning, it's Friday, and he's like, "Hey, what's our plans for this evening?" And I'm like, "I intentionally didn't book it because I saw my calendar Thursday and Friday and was like, I want to allow the space that I may be very tired or I may be super wired up and we're going to like go do something really fun." And I think that for me has been part of the pursuit of joy, is just relaxing into the idea that I'm going to, and trusting myself to know at different days I need different things.
mhm.
Because there's been days where I'm like, "Ooh, I have no idea. I might be really zombied out after that." And it turns out, nope, I'm wired for sound and I'm ready for people I need people. And other days when I think, oh, I'm going to have a lot of energy, and I'll be like, wow, do not want to be in the same room as another human. And I will tolerate my husband. So anyway, I would say that it's the flexibility to trust myself, to know different days need different things.
Yeah, yeah, I
Mm.
love that. We're very similar in that regard, and I think the more you can pay attention to that too
Yes.
is so good, because I have been caught in that busy trap of just go 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 go, and then looking at like, well, I'm not even getting reaching my goals, and I'm like, what are my goals anyway, and what's really
Right.
important, and things like
Hmm.
that. But you go 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 and don't give yourself that downtime,
Yeah.
right? Because we're not supposed to rest, right? Rest is bad, and it's really not.
Yeah.
It's really
Well, and I know that there were seasons. I can remember there was one season where, like, I think we had an exchange student who was on one traveling soccer team, and both of our children were on traveling soccer teams, and then we had like football, and we had all the things. And I said to my husband, "We are not going to complain about how busy we are for the next 4 months. We just gonna hang on to the roller coaster because this time is coming to a close. And so
yep.
let's enjoy every dip and turn." And did I get tired that season? Oh my word, I was tired by November. I was deliriously tired. But I just committed to not doing it, because a year later I'm sitting at the senior night on my son's last soccer game, and I'm like, it's
What just
this
happened?
this that chapter's over. And
Hmm.
I like felt like I felt so good about the gift I had given myself of just
Sure.
being in it. Like,
Hmm.
and so not there's some seasons where you don't get a lot of rest, and there's some seasons where you can't like do the thing, which I do appreciate your like 10-minute or 5-minute after drop off, or wherever you can wiggle those times in. I do appreciate that, because those seasons when it's just chaotic, and now people will be like, "You're so busy," or "How do you get so much done?" And I'm like, I'm not carting people to a soccer field 15 hours a week
Hmm. Yeah.
and every weekend in a different state. Like, this is nothing. My life is so easy now compared to that. Of course I have a lot more capacity. So anyway, I think that that's just the wherever you're at. If you're in the small seasons where you're still diaper changing, if you're in the seasons, I love the elementary years because they're not real busy yet. And but then you get into the teenage years, and just hang on and enjoy it
Right.
and try to be where you are. And if you're in the empty nest and you're sad that it's over, I would encourage you. There are people in the world that are like really, really hungry for still having some parental kinds of units and some parental kinds of people, and they may not listen. I love volunteering with college ministry stuff
Mm.
or college age things on campus. I promise there's people that need international students to have dinner or whatever. So if you're hungry for that, like you missed out or you still miss it, like go do something about it, like
That's a good
solve your
idea.
problem.
Yeah,
You
I didn't
know,
think about that
I
with,
mean, we loved having exchange students. We had exchange
mm,
students 2 different years, and we loved it. And the coordinators are like, "You guys loved it so much. Do you want it again?" I'm like, "No, I'm not getting back on the rat race of school.
right.
No, there's
Yeah,
no way." But you can. And so if
right.
you miss it, I promise there's so many people. There may be a teen pregnancy in your area. There may be a something. Find a
Hmm.
way to give back and to volunteer and to get that need met. Identify the need, and it doesn't have to be forever. So anyway,
Hmm.
okay,
Yeah,
stop, soapbox over.
yeah. Well, and along those similar lines, women do get to that stage in their life where their kids leave home, and a part of them leaves with them, right? Because they focus so much on, raising them and being a part of their lives, and they go off to college or they leave and go to the military or get married or leave or whatever, and they're left like, okay, is this it? I mean,
Right.
so look for other, but also look for community. That's what I'm
Yes.
continuing to form different communities. If it's a little kind of gathering at my house, or we have a walking group and so we go walking. I'm actually creating a joy box workshop, so we can, and I'm starting to do one at, we have it's called the Living Well Cancer Center. So it's a place that people who are diagnosed with cancer within this medical system here can go for services, be it that they need to figure out a wig, or they need some counseling or art or movement or things like that. And I love the art classes. And so it came about as I was talking about my journal and about joy. And the art gal said, why don't you, and about this idea of doing a joy box workshop. She said, why don't you do it here? I mean, these women need some more joy in their life. And so
I
we're going to
love
do
that.
something in the fall that they can create their own box where they can put those physical reminders of joy, be it that you get a beautiful card from a friend of yours, or a little rock you found, or a little feather, or whatever the case is. And then there's that box that's filled with those things that if you're feeling down and things like that, you can
It's
revisit
beautiful.
your box of joy. But the point is that we're getting together in community,
I love that.
and that's what I think is so important. Again, go volunteer because now you have more time, um, or find a community,
Yeah.
and there may be one you can you can start one yourself,
Yep.
or maybe at your local library or in your church, or just ask some friends at the coffee shop to go for a walk. And before you know it, I mean, that's what Mel Robbins did. She moved to a new community and she felt isolated and alone, and she started talking to people at her coffee shop and said, do you like to walk? And now she's got a great walking group.
I
You just
love
never
that.
know, but it's
That's
you can
beautiful.
seek those things out.
I
That's
love
awesome.
that. I
Yeah.
also I like just finding the little things that you can remind yourself of joy,
Hmm.
and a rock or a feather or things like that. It feels almost like reconnecting with what are the things as a little kid that you were like, this is beautiful. I want to collect this. I want to keep this. And you can still follow those instincts as an
Mhm.
adult. I this week biked to work, and on my way to work, part of the bike trail goes along this creek, and I was moved by just the beauty of the creek on this morning. And I was like, I want to go get in the creek. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, I'm being pulled like a magnet. And as I'm biking along, I'm like, Sammy, you have to go to work. Like, you're gonna get wet and then you're gonna go into the office. And he's like, no, I'm not gonna get in the creek. What are you talking about? Yes, I am. I'm gonna go get in the creek and like whatever. And so right before the turn off where I had to go away from the creek to get to my office, I stopped and I took my shoes off and I went and I walked into the creek and I splashed my face and I just like sat there and soaked it in. And it was like, this
Mm.
is beautiful and perfect and joyful and amazing. And I didn't have to take any pictures of it to post on Instagram to tell everybody I was having a joyful
Right.
moment. And now here I am on a podcast still telling everybody about this beautiful
Right.
moment.
Right.
But still, It was just for me. It was
Mhm.
only, it was following that like little nudge on the inside that said, I want to do this. And it was like, so you're going to go do this. Why
Oh,
not?
I love
If the biggest concern is that my shoes are going to get wet, I'm going to take off my shoes.
Mhm.
And like, that was
Yeah.
it. And so I think that also, if you've got that little nudge on the inside that says, go do this thing, go do it. Why
That's
not?
Mhm.
awesome.
Why
Yep.
not follow that?
Absolutely. I love that.
Thank you so much for joining us today and having
Oh,
this
you're welcome. Love
conversation.
this. Yeah.
I One of the things we like to ask our guests is that if there's one piece of encouragement or one thing you want to leave people with, what would you hope people walk away from this conversation with, or just one little nugget to leave them with?
Well, I think it is that idea that again, at the end of the day, you know, there you are. I mean, it starts with you, even if you're a wife or a friend or a spouse or, a mother or any of those things or coworker, whatever you are, the CEO of your company. You've got to start by taking care of you, because really if you're no good, nobody else around you is good. So I really want to encourage women or women, men, whoever's listening to this, just, spend a little time taking care of yourself and give yourself some grace, because, right, we all make mistakes. We've all had, like you said, Angela, those seasons, the things that have been good and bad, but just give yourself some grace and just, you know, talk to yourself in a loving way. And as simple as that might seem, it can really, um, it's what we all need in a world like today, and that we've beat ourselves up for so long, and again looked at the bad. Like just start being a little kinder to yourself, and it's really the start of your journey to joy. Um, that's what I'd like people to hear.
I would love that. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing with us today. Where can people find you? Where can they find your podcast? How can they learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. I am on all the podcast um, platforms. Again, your journey to joy. So on iTunes and Spotify, and hosted on Podbean. And then I'm very active on social. So you can find me, Moyra Gorski, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Those are the places I hang out the
Okay.
most. You can find links and things like that you can send me messages or just follow along. I love to have people follow along and send me messages, and especially about the podcast, to say, hey, this was really, it really touched me today, and I really learned this, and I shared it with a friend. So that's where people can find me.
I love it. We'll put those links in the show notes as well so you guys can have them real handy for you. Thank you guys so much for listening. We're so glad that you guys are a part of our journey. And if you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, go to our website, the letter B, freakingawesome.com. And we would love to continue to send you more information and insider scoop and behind the scenes stories and all of that. So go join that list. Until next time, we hope you guys go be freaking awesome.